Hey everyone, and welcome back to Trade Dissections. Boy, do I ever have a doozy for you this week. We're going to talk about the time the New Orleans Saints traded every pick they had to move up 7 spots in a draft. If you're already a Saints fan, you kind of know what this is already. And if you aren't a Saints fan, you might know this one as well. But I'll bet you can't name the other team involved, nor what they did with all of those picks. This is the Ricky Williams trade dissection. Now, I shouldn't need to explain to anyone who Ricky Williams is, but just in case, here we go. Ricky Williams was a running back out of the University of Texas. While there, he broke both the NCAA Division I records for rushing yards and all-purpose yards from scrimmage. His rushing record would soon be broken afterwards by Ron Dane, who would have his record broken by Donnell Pumphrey. Of course, before 2002, none of the bowl stats were included in a season total. So, if you include Ron Dane's stats, that puts him at over 6,900 yards, well ahead of Pumphrey. In fact, if you include bowl stats for Ricky Williams, that would edge him over with 6,500 yards, also ahead of Pumphrey. Williams was a big bruising back, but also shifty and capable of catching passes out of the backfield. He could also block decently. He had started his career as a fullback before shifting over to running back. He forewent the 1998 draft to return to college and wound up setting all the records before going into the 1999 NFL draft, where there was a question of who was the better running back. Was it Williams or was it Edgerrin James? Spoiler alert, they both did pretty well, but James wound up in the Hall of Fame. After the first 3 picks went to quarterbacks, the Colts grabbed Edgerrin James, the Edge. Mike Ditka sensed that the time was right and pulled the trigger on a trade. New Orleans would send their 1999 first-rounder, 12th overall, their third-rounder, 71st overall, their fourth-rounder, number 107, their fifth-rounder, number 144, their sixth-rounder, number 179, their 7th rounder, number 218, as well as a 2000 first rounder and a 2000 third rounder. Whew! And that all went to Washington. In return for that insanity, they would get the 5th overall pick in 99. They gave up 8 picks to move up 7 spots. It was utterly bonkers and roundly mocked by all the pundits at the time. Then it didn't help matters that right after this, ESPN the magazine did a photo shoot, and on the cover of the magazine was Ricky Williams in a wedding dress next to Mike Ditka. Red flags, anybody? Enough of that, though. Was Williams good for New Orleans? Did his presence make up for the draft picks they lost? In a word, no. In more than one word, it's kind of complicated, but no, not really. His time with the Saints saw him play 38 of a possible 48 regular season games. In that time, he'd rushed for 3,129 yards and 16 touchdowns. In that time, the team would go 20-28, infamously going 3-13 his rookie year and costing Mike Ditka his job. They would make the playoffs once with Williams, beating the Rams in the wild card. Sadly, realizing that this wasn't working out and looking to recoup some of the assets they lost, the Saints would eventually trade Williams after 3 seasons. The trade was Ricky Williams and a 2002 fourth rounder, 114th overall, that would become tight end Randy McMichael, to Miami for a 2002 first rounder, 25th overall, a fourth rounder in 2002, 125th overall, and a first rounder in 2003. That would turn out to be 18th overall. So, how did Williams do? Williams exploded that season in Miami and put up arguably his best numbers as a pro. He'd then be involved in a marijuana incident and take an entire year off to go to India and learn holistic medicine. He'd come back to football, have another marijuana problem, before he'd come back and eventually at the age of 32 put up another really good season before eventually retiring. So what did the Saints get from Miami for all of this? Well, that first round pick, that wound up being Charles Grant. That was a majorly good pick. In his career, he'd have 430 tackles and 47 sacks. You know what? That is not bad. Not bad at all. He would also anchor a D-line that would help New Orleans to the Super Bowl at the end of the 09-10 season. Oh, they would win that Super Bowl. The fourth round pick was used on Keuvo Craver, who played 22 games and had 22 tackles. His career highlight was a scoop and score against Green Bay. Not horrible for a fourth rounder. That 2003 first round pick wasn't used, at least not by the Saints. They wound up packaging it with their own first rounder in 2003, that was 17th overall, and a second rounder in 2003, 54th overall. They sent them all to the Arizona Cardinals for a 2003 first rounder, 6th overall, a 2003 second rounder, 37th overall, and a 2003 fourth rounder, 102nd overall. How did that play out? Well, the 18th pick was used on Calvin Pace, defensive end linebacker, meh. The first round number 17 pick was used on Bryant Johnson, a wide receiver, also decidedly meh. Now, the 54th pick, though, Anquan Boldin. Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. Talk about striking it rich. Whew. Well, how did the Saints do in this? Well, that first round 6th overall pick was used on Jonathan Sullivan. He was a defensive tackle. He was not anywhere near as good as what the 6th overall pick would be. In fact, that was the same draft where the Vikings would take Kevin Williams. I honestly think that's probably who the Saints should have gone for. But they did end up trading him to the Patriots for Bethel Johnson. Neither of them would ever play a down for their new teams, as both would be released right after the trade. But that second round pick, 37th overall, that turned into John Stinchcomb. That's pretty good. Stinchcomb was a beast on the offensive line for them and helped block for Drew Brees. Oh yeah, and he was there as a key part of the team when they won the Super Bowl. Fourth rounder was Montre Holland. Didn't really find much on him. So, that's actually not bad for the Saints. It's where their dissection ends. But they ended up winning a Super Bowl out of it. I think that's pretty good. In fact, I think most teams would say that they did a lot better than they had any right to do. But if Washington goes on to win multiple Super Bowls or something, maybe this trade looks pretty bad. What happened to them? Oh boy. Okay, so this starts decently and just goes so wrong. We'll start over here. Washington would take the 12th overall pick and the 71st overall pick and package them with a round 4 pick in the same draft, number 106, a round 5 pick, number 143, and a round 3 in the following year, which would be 87th. And they would send that whole package to Chicago. How did those picks turn out? You can see them here. The 12th overall pick was Cade McNown. Meh. The 71st overall pick was Dwayne Bates. The 106 with Warwick Holdman. None of these guys add up to the guy that Washington gets, because they would trade for the 7th overall pick, 5 spots up. It's a lot of stuff for 5 spots, but the guy was worth it, as it was Hall of Fame cornerback Champ Bailey. That's the best corner of a generation. However, they would eventually have a contract dispute with him. Famously, he said that he would sit out an entire season if they franchise tagged him, and then randomly and rather suddenly, they traded him. And they threw in a second rounder as well that turned into Tatum Bell. And they transferred that to the Denver Broncos for Clinton Portis. Was Clinton Portis good? Yes. Heck of a running back. Really helped smash the Washington ground game. But he wasn't Bailey. And they certainly should not have thrown in that second round pick of Tatum Bell, because he turned out to be pretty good too. Clinton Portis had a career that was cut short due to injuries and concussions. What could have been, sadly, it is what it is. So, what else would they do? Well, that round 4, 107th pick was used on Nate Stimson. Never played a down for them. The round 5 pick, that was packaged with their own second rounder. Those were used on Kyrie Samuel and Tony Bryant, and they would send that. Oh, look, it's the Bears again. And they would grab John Jansen. Okay, that's pretty good. Offensive tackle, major beast and an anchor on their line. Major win. Played for 10 seasons for the Redskins. Pretty doggone good. So, moving along. They would take the 6th rounder they got and the 7th rounder they got, who turned into Desmond Clark and Billy Miller. Desmond Clark was a Pro Bowler, by the way. They would trade those picks to the Denver Broncos for the 5th round, 165th overall pick, an offensive tackle named Derek Smith. He would never play a down for Washington. Now, what about the rest of it? Well, that 1st round pick turned out to be 2nd overall, because did we mention that the Saints only had 3 wins the next season? What would they get him? That would turn into LeVar Arrington. Beast of a linebacker. Absolutely a fantastic player. Totally worth the 2nd overall pick. Great career with them. Couldn't come to terms with him at the end of one of his contracts. He would sign with the New York Giants, play half a season, rupture his Achilles, immediately get into a motorcycle accident, and retire from football. That 3rd rounder, 64th overall, turned into cornerback Lloyd Harrison. Never played a down with the team. So, this is where that trade dissection ends. Who won? You know what? Honestly, it was the Saints. They mostly got fleeced in the initial trade, but then made up for it by making savvy trades later that helped them win a Super Bowl. Washington looked at everything they got and then traded most of it away. The pieces they got back from those trades were pretty good sometimes, but then were either mismanaged or they just flat out missed on them. Look, getting Champ Bailey was great. Trading him away with a bonus pick was silly. John Jansen was absolutely a great pick. Others weren't. LeVar Arrington was a beast until you couldn't sign him, and then he went to the Giants, got hurt, and retired. Even the pick of Lloyd Harrison could have been better. You could have had, if you go with just cornerbacks, Hank Poteet or David Macklin. Both of them were cornerbacks, both of them had better careers than Lloyd Harrison, and both of them wound up being drafted after Harrison. In fact, if you want to go with the best player in that round, you could have grabbed Lavernius Coles. The best player in that draft, though, was still available in the 3rd round. In fact, he wouldn't be picked until 199th overall. And I'm not going to ding them for it, because how do you let him go to 199th overall? That's right, I'm talking about Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr. This is that draft. But there was still so much potential for Washington to do something great out of this. And they just squandered it. For that reason, man, Saints win. Next time, we're going to go over to the NBA and look at that time two major superstars were feuding after winning a lot of titles, and one of them wanted out. I'll let you figure out which set I'm talking about, but for now, if you like what we do here, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and until next time, stay bearded. Peace.